Welcome back, everybody. My name's Doug, and this is Dying to Retire. And today, I'm going to talk about H1B visas. H1B visas, yep. And I'm going to talk about how they lie using the truth, and it's easier than you think. I'm not beating a dead horse with a stick here. I'm just going to go over a bunch of numbers here, and I'm going to do a little thought exercise for everybody. Let's not get into wage inflation or deflation on that, suppressing. I'm not going to get into any of this racism, who's favored or not. Don't want to get into it. What I just want to get into is how they can lie using the truth. And this is the part that upsets me the most. So let's get started. All right, for this thought exercises, we're going to have a company named Zed. And all the numbers I'm going to be using here are for demonstration purposes, example only. Okay, company Zed, just so you know, it's a multinational company. It has software and hardware solutions. That's their product. It's an industry leader. Worldwide, it has 1,000 employees, but for the U.S. location, it only has 100. Next slide. All right, so let's look at the office here. It has 100 employees, and like any other office, I'm going to break it down into, I think it's like 7 categories here. You have an executive office, R&D office, the sales and marketing, operations, IT, you have your finance, and then you have your admin support. All right. But the 3 I really want to focus on are the executive, the R&D, and IT, because these ones we see directly can have STEM-related positions. Next slide. All right. So let's break down how this company's Zed looks like. In the executive office, they have 5 positions. 2 are held by U.S. persons. The other 3 are held by visa holders. R&D has 30 positions, in which 4 are held by U.S. persons, and the other 26 are held by H1B visa holders. Sales and marketing, 10 positions, all U.S. persons. Operations, 20, all U.S. persons. IT support, you have 10 positions, 2 are U.S. persons, the rest are held by people under the visas. Finance, 10, all U.S. persons. Admin support, 15, all U.S. persons. So there you have 100%. There's 100 of your employees. That's 37 positions or H1B visas. So in reality, when you're looking at it, if you compare it with 1,000 employees worldwide, this company is only using 3.7% H1B visa holders to fill their positions. If you look at the U.S. office, it's actually more around 37% of the positions at that location are held by U.S. visa holders. Next slide. But this is where you begin to lie with the numbers. When you're looking at that 37%, they're doing a comparison to apples and oranges instead of apples to apples. And this is why it's important to look at the different occupational groups. This is how they hide the magic, the man behind the curtain. What do you call that little shell game and mix around and play with it? That's what this shit is, and that's how they do it. So the executive, it looks kind of cool, but it's actually 60% of the positions in the executive office are H1B visa holders. If you look in R&D, it's 87% of the positions are filled by the visa holders. And if you go to IT support, it's 80% of the positions are filled by H1B visa holders. So it's not 37% because they're comparing, and I'm not trying to demean anyone, the office secretary or the file clerk with the STEM positions, and you can't, and you shouldn't. Remember the wage gap between men and women, but they didn't actually do the comparison? That's the fun with numbers that they're actually doing here. Next slide. Let's say the company grew to 105 employees, and all of the new 5 employees dropped into the R&D department. However, they never changed the number of H1B visa positions they had. So it's still 37. So overall, the company went from that location from having 37% was H1B down to 35. But what they did is a game, and I'm going to show you this next couple slides what the game is. Now, the new positions in R&D also were for U.S. persons. But are they? Next slide. All right. Here's what they ended up doing. The H1B visa is a dual intent visa. What this basically means is when you get your H1B visa and coming in, you can also be asking for your LPR. So what happens is a lot of time, and the LPR takes a couple of years, longer than the H1B visa if you're selected. So once you get in, They apply for their LPR. These companies have immigration lawyers and everyone working with their visa holders to work through this process because they have experts, because it's beneficial to the company. What they're going to do is get the sponsor for your LPR. You need a sponsor. Well, that's shit. That's going to be your holder for the H1B. Goes through a perm process, then you do the form, I-140. And then when you're approved, you adjust your status. So you're switching from an H1B to an LPR. So now you are a U.S. person, or that worker is a U.S. person. And what all they're doing is those 5 positions that were moved over, now the company can go back to the bench, the H1B bench, to replace the 5. They just backfill them. So they remain at the 37 count. But those new people in those positions are not U.S. citizens, U.S. workers. They're U.S. persons because they're on LPR status. How they can do this? Well, in 2000, I think you Orrin Hatch and I forget the other guy, it's the American Competitiveness Act, AC 21. Remember what they ever say about the titles of bills and titles of acts? They actually do the reverse of what they're intended to do. And when you look at this name of the act, AC 21, you kind of realize it's kind of true. So what they do is they move these people over. So at the end of the day, when I said you have, I'm going to look at the R&D, it looks on paper, it dropped to 74%, but in reality, it went up to 89% of foreign workers in those positions. But let's really look at it. Let's say the company grew to 121, a substantial increase in a couple of years. But they still can keep the 37 H-1B visa positions. At the end of the day, it looks like the total dropped to 30 from the 37, but did it? And I'm going to play around with the numbers here. So the executive branch, they increased a couple of positions. So it's 4 U.S. positions and 3 H-1Bs still. R&D is now 44 positions with 18 U.S., still only 26 H-1B. And then the IT support grew to 15, 7 U.S. positions. So they increased the U.S. positions and still only 8 H-1B. So on paper, it shrunk. It's 30% overall, only 42% in the executive, only 59 in the R&D, and it dropped all the way to 53 on paper in the IT. But in reality, it is 71% of the executive branch office, is H-1B visa holders. It is actually 90% in R&D, and it's 86% in the IT. And how did they do that? Well, remember I talked about changing? That's all they're doing. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's this cycle from the H-1B to LPR. And they can move the employees in there and start taking these positions or creating new positions, calling them solely U.S. persons positions, but filling them with LPRs. So it's lying with the truth. They are U.S. persons in there, but it's not the U.S. worker. It's a person because they're using this pipeline, this assembly line to bring the workers in this way. Gets even worse when you start factoring in the H-4 spousal visas who are also dual intent. You have the children who are here on H-4 visas. When they get college age, they can switch them to an F-1 visa, use the OTP program, and then automatically go into an H-1B visa position. And when they hire these positions, also the other part is these people who are coming over in the LPR, they have the sponsor for the job. Good Lord, they are the perfect candidate. Why? They've been working 3 to 5 years for this company already. So on paper, it's fantastic. But it's a little lie. It's not a U.S. citizen who's getting the job. It's an LPR who just recently came off an H-1B visa. They can move this all around because you have the L1s, the L1Bs, the L1As. All of them use this process to move people in and out. And this is at the end of the year. That company, when you go back and look at all those 121 positions, in time, I can turn them all yellow in reality. And that's what's happening to a lot of companies, a lot of workplaces throughout America. So again, this is how you can lie, telling the truth. It's easier than you think. If you have thoughts, questions, experiences that you went through, please put them in the comments below. It'd be really helpful. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. It helps me in the channel, keeps the wife off my ass. because, I'm retired now. And it's like, you need to find a hobby. Oh, hell, this is my hobby. Also, again, as always, I'm Doug. This is Dying to Retire, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.